Joining me today is Becky McNattin, Director of Clinical Services at Relate Counseling. What are some positive steps or mental exercises people can do every day to help them stay positive and hopeful?
Fantastic question. And I would say the first and most important thing that I would convey that people need to do every day is breathe. So often when we're feeling anxious and overwhelmed and stressed, we hold our breath without even realizing it or noticing it. And taking moments in our day, even just brief moments like 1 minute, and setting a timer where we can be aware of breathing and try to take some deep breaths and do this maybe 5 or 6 times through our day can be really helpful. In addition to that, kind of on the mindfulness component, lots of us right now are really only able to get outside of our homes to do walks and go for walks around our neighborhoods or on trails. And instead of coming into our own minds and thinking about topics that we may spin on, challenging ourselves to be aware of what's around us is really helpful. And I think of 2 options in having what I would consider a mindful walk. One is a sensory walk, and I think of that as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you could touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And certainly you can interplay those senses, but it causes us to pay attention and attune into our walk in ways that we maybe haven't before. And another way of doing that walk is pick a number, maybe between 5 and 10, and challenge yourself to notice that many items or that many things on your walk that you haven't seen in the same way before. All of those things help us ground in the present and pay attention to the present in a moment right now where we're all in, where it's very anxious and stressful and overwhelming. One other thing that I would say is developing a mantra, and this is just kind of a short sentence, things like, I am safe, I will be okay, I will get through this, the worst is not the last. Any of those things can be really helpful to post around our homes, even on Post-it notes or small pieces of paper that we tape on the refrigerator or on the bathroom mirror to help us remember things that we really want to believe.
So are there books or websites or other resources that can also help people stay positive and basically find the silver lining in the dark clouds?
One very popular person who is nationally renowned but is from Minnesota, his name is Henry Emmons. He's a psychiatrist from Minnesota. He currently has a training institute that he is offering free classes on Facebook now around resiliency. And I think it's one, for those who aren't familiar with resiliency, it is those kind of mindful components, those ways that we can practice staying grounded in the present, and strategies that we can just implement in our daily life. So I would really encourage people to seek out Henry Emmons' podcast or his Facebook. There's a website called Very Well Mind, and lots of articles written by mental health professionals or mental health practitioners, and a lot of information around how to manage through the COVID situation right now. There's another very well-renowned person, Brené Brown, who has several podcasts out around positivity and finding ourselves, and so I would recommend those too.
So who do you suggest that people talk to when they are feeling hopeless, overwhelmed, afraid, or even dealing with grief from all the losses that we have had?
Well, you touch on something pretty profound there. Grief is a very real experience right now. I think one that we don't talk enough about in our news or in our stories, that there is so much shared loss occurring in people's lives at this time. Not only loss from what has already happened, but loss that we sit in about what's happening right now, and then loss that we're thinking about in the future, in the coming months of things that all of us were hopeful for, like summer sports or summer vacations, for lots of people, graduations or graduation parties, even thinking about going off to college. And people are wrestling with how is that going to be different now? And so we call that anticipated loss. And a lot of the feelings that people are having right now are around this grief process. And how do we sit with that? And how do we allow ourselves just a space to feel uncomfortable and say, it's okay that I'm not okay. And give myself some space for that and be kind to myself that I'm not okay right now. So who would I suggest that we talk to? Well, definitely therapists are helpful. I've been doing this for a lot of years. At Relate Counseling Center, we have 68 therapists who all are people who can be a guide and a resource, a confidential resource for people as they're needing to process what's happening for them. And definitely support networks for people. I think about the toolbox that we all have as we go through adversity. And when we think about who that was for us, is that our friends, was that our neighbors, were those family members? This is the time to be reaching out to them. I can't tell you how many times that I've heard, gosh, I'm not talking to my friends right now because there's just not a lot to say, or I'm not reaching out to my family right now because there's not a lot to say. This is exactly the time we need to be reaching out to our support network and who those people were in our lives that would help us get through things.
So what I'm hearing from you is when people are sad or melancholy or just emotional, it's okay for them to feel that way, and as long as it isn't for long term. But at what point should people seek help if they remain to be, just plain sad?
Well, for all of the people out there that are feeling sad right now, I want them to hear me, that I hear you, and that it is normal, and that we are in a shared state as a community, as a society of sadness and grief and loss. So if you are feeling sad, that is A-okay. And what can you do about it? Well, you need to be kind to yourself in this, practicing the self-compassion and giving yourself some space to acknowledge that this is what it is and focus on the aspects of your life that are good.
Other from feeling sad, then there's a whole nother aspect of feeling isolated, being lonely. And some people are just by themselves. So what other things can people do to, help with those feelings of isolation and loneliness?
Totally normal to feel lonely right now, and we're supposed to be isolating. That's literally our task. And so as people are home alone, feeling isolated, certainly this is much more profound for people who are living alone and do not have people in their lives. Something that might be helpful is looking for music to be a validator. I think music is a way for us to also change the channel in the things that we might be thinking about. But I encourage people who are living alone, find a set of songs that might match your mood, or a song that makes you think of a feeling that you're currently having, and let the feeling be validated by the music you're listening to. And so giving us opportunity when we feel isolated to say, I'm going to acknowledge what I feel. I'm going to let myself feel that. I'm going to give myself a space to feel that. And then I'm going to ask myself what I need. And I tell people often, be the friend to yourself that you would be to other people. What would that be? And if you had a friend who came to you and said, I'm struggling, or I'm sad, or I feel lonely, what would you say to them? And then if you take those things that you would say to them, say that to yourself, and then do those things for you.
So COVID-19 information is coming from everywhere for people. There's messages, there's emails, it's in commercials. It's basically everywhere. So how does someone get themselves through that without getting basically stuck in a rut or being brought in and it making you feel sad or melancholy?
The key piece to that is setting time limits. The key piece is really knowing of the time limits, when are you starting to feel those feelings that aren't helpful for you? The messages are everywhere and the hardship is everywhere. It's not difficult to get immersed in it and to then get consumed by it. So it really is a challenge for us to think about, how much can I handle? And when can I handle it? Is there even a time of day that's worse for me? Am I more susceptible to it at nighttime than I might be in the morning? Or is this a midday thing? I can't do this in the evening because I go to bed thinking about it, or I go to bed dreaming about it. It makes me not be able to fall asleep. So knowing what those pieces are, and then knowing when to set not only time limits, but perhaps daytime limits as well.
Can you tell us how anxiety and stress affect us physically and mentally?
Anxiety and stress actually cause our body to go into alert or high alert, which is our fight or flight response. That is a helpful thing. It keeps us safe. It teaches us right from wrong. It helps us know what we ought to do and choices we ought to make. So we actually need some anxiety and some stress. They're motivating feelings. It's when we have too much of them or have them too often and with too much intensity that we really need to know how that is impacting us. Definitely there can be physical ramifications of feeling anxiety too much, too frequently, and too long. And that can mean headaches, sleeplessness or fatigue, digestive issues, pain, muscle tension, and definitely on the psychological or emotional side, people can start to experience symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorders. And that would be a time really to seek out, in addition to not just support network, but some professional guidance around this.
What suggestions do you have for parents when they're talking to their children about, what's happening currently and what is also going to change eventually? Like, parents aren't going to be around, they're going back to work, they're not going to be accessible anymore, and there's going to be free time, but mom and dad might not be around.
Part of what is a massive challenge for parents right now is trying to convey information to kids without having information themselves. What we have to adapt to every single day is new information. And so it is this delicate balance of offering something to our children that feels like information without overwhelming them. And so talking to kids and starting to talk to them that change is going to happen and how do they feel about it? And I would say starting a conversation with just life might look a little different sometime soon. We don't know when and we don't really know how, but how do you feel about that? I might not be around as often. And just starting to engage kids in a processing of how they feel opens up that dialogue of living with the unknown. One key piece that I always tell parents and therapists that relate who work with young kids are frequently telling parents, it is so key for parents to stay regulated themselves. So we need to be talking to our children when we also can hold our own anxiety, hold our own fear, hold our own sadness and grief, and then allow us to be a container for our kids' feelings.
In general, how can people ease their minds moving forward?
I think the biggest thing would be for all of us to challenge ourselves to live in the moment that is occurring, which is the present. Anxiety is so much about challenging us to live in a moment that has already happened, which would be the past, or a moment that has yet to happen, which is the future, both of which we don't have any control over. We don't have an ability to fix or change what has already occurred, and we don't know because we don't have the information yet on what is going to unfold in the future. And so whatever those toolbox strategies are, or whatever things we can do to help not only us but our kids stay in the present and stay grounded in the current moment and tell ourselves those things like, I will be okay. I will get through this. That is what I would hammer home to anybody that they should be doing right now.
Can you tell us more about Relate's teletherapy?
Yes, so we have 68 therapists that work at Relate. We have therapists who are immersed in 9 school districts, and we are providing teletherapy currently to kids within school districts and also from our office. We see kids of all ages, starting as early as they come in the early childhood age range. We have clinicians that focus only on working with early childhood up through every age of adult. We work with couples, we work with families, and of course, then like I said, we work with school-age children. And all of our therapists are currently doing telehealth services. We are meeting with people all times of the day, early morning through the day, evening, and even on the weekends. And we do have immediate openings right now. So if anyone is feeling like therapy would be a helpful tool for them right now, please reach out. Please do not see this as a moment to isolate yourselves further. Therapy is very helpful, and we are here for you.
Thank you so much. This has been very helpful, and I think it will make a difference in a lot of people's lives.
Oh, thanks so much, Kelly.